I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music, the best kept secret in music reviews. Today, album came out about a month ago, and we previewed it, and we're kind of meh on it for reasons we're going to explain here in a minute. But actually, 8035, Iowa's only the only real music festival, in my opinion. I mean, we have some other tiny festivals that come on in Iowa, but Tom and I are from Iowa. Iowa doesn't have, usually if we want to go see a concert, we're driving at least 3 hours to go see a concert.
Yep.
And we're willing to do that. It's no big deal. There's a lot of nice things about Iowa, but it's not like Iowa has this burgeoning music scene, as my dear friend Tom knows all too well. Yes. That being said, we're really excited about having a festival that's been going on for several years now. 8035 is this coming weekend, and Conor Oberst is the headliner on July 1st. Or 4th. I think it's the 4th.
It's the 4th. You're right. You're right. You're right. Yes.
Anyways,
right.
His album, Upside Down Mountain, which is, I think, his 6th studio album, and apart from his work with the indie pop folk group Bright Eyes, who are very prolific in the 2000s, this is his 6th solo record. And Tom, how would you describe the sound of Upside Down Mountain? Is it upside down? Is it that crazy upside down?
I don't know what upside down music sounds like.
What is an upside down mountain? Personally, I think this is a stupid album title. I just gotta get that out.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, Conor Oberst, definitely on the indie folk side of things. Bright Eyes has been kind of doing that sound for years and years before it even hit popular radio, which is kind of where that sound is at now. Yeah. But there's been several different iterations and reincarnations of this kind of sound in Conor Oberst's own career. I mean, as a solo artist with Bright Eyes, with Monsters of Folk, he's worked with a lot of different artists, and he has a sound that he's constantly evolving, but it still kind of centers around that general genre.
Yeah, and he's, I think garners a lot of attention, and rightfully so. He has a very unique voice. It has almost this just like, you can just hear a lot of emotion. It's almost like his voice is about to crack at any moment. Not so much in like the Sam Beam, Iron and Wine sort of like folk way, but more in just kind of like a almost emo sort of way. But it works with folk music a lot better than I think it would emo music.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, he's done some work as a post-hardcore artist. I'm really interested to hear what that would sound like. But Conor Oberst is well known for his lyrical talents. And that's a subject I want to dive into in a bit, but I'm going to wait for now because I want to just take a minute and go through how this album just plays out, how it evolves. It starts off, I think, a lot more full sound, like a full band sound. And going into this, knowing it's a solo record rather than something with Bright Eyes, I wasn't expecting that full sound, especially like track 2, Zigzagging Toward the Light. That track was, it's one of our favorite tracks on this record. A very full sound, lots of instruments, very upbeat, has just a 90s feel to it, which I like. We started listening to music in the 90s, so I have a lot of fond memories of that. So, Hundreds of Ways, track 3, another upbeat song. I think sounds like a lot of Paul Simon, but throughout especially the beginning of this album, these songs have a foundation of acoustic guitar with electric guitar melody overlays, and then he builds in instruments around it, whether that be horns or electronic melodies, drums, bass, all these other things, and then his vocals kind of add on top of that. So it just makes this big sound. As the album progresses, he has a couple of alt country songs on there. Yep. And then he does a few that are more simple, where it's just acoustic guitar or just guitars and his voice, and they're much more folk driven, I'd say. As the album goes on, it does get back to some of the louder tracks, more full production at the end. But so really, this album runs the gamut of styles that I would expect from an artist like Conor Oberst. Yeah. And so really, it's I wouldn't necessarily call this a smorgasbord, although it tends to be that way. I do feel like it kind of encapsulates what I would consider like a fluid album listen. I can listen to this and see how it was designed, but really it comes down to execution. Yeah, Tom, absolutely. How did he execute this?
I do not think he executed it very well.
Okay, and why?
Why?
That's what we're all about. Exactly. That's what we're all about.
We gotta justify it. Well, first off, I'll come out and say this. I think that the #1 issue that artists making music today are making in general, if there's a problem with an album, it's too damn long. And I think that Upside Down Mountain suffers for that
55
immensely.
Minutes, 54 minutes long.
54 minutes, and there's just not enough content there real content, diverse enough content to justify that. Now, you mentioned it's a bit of a smorgasbord in sound. There are a lot of different instrumentals coming in and out of these songs, but there's still mainly like 2 different kinds of songs.
That's true.
You know, there's the kind of more full band sounding ones, and then there's
the more
intimate
track,
one.
whether
Exactly.
it's folk or country or whatnot.
Exactly, like a kind of acoustic guitar based and vocal based, really. But still, those 2 different kinds of songs on this album, whichever one you pick, they accomplish kind of the same thing.
They totally do.
And even he's using a lot of the same vocal melodies, he's using a lot of the same lyrical themes, and I don't feel like he's really bringing much new. Now, not only is he repeating himself within this album, I feel like, he's also repeating material from his own career, and also what other people have done in their careers in the past decade or so.
I totally agree. I kind of feel like this entire album isn't really that original.
No.
A lot of this has been done before by Bright Eyes, by Conor Oberst in the past, by many other indie folk artists out there, and he's not really bringing that much new to it other than his lyrics. But I gotta say, you know, these aren't like any new lyrical subjects that he's writing about. This is all in the theme and motif that he's worked in before.
Absolutely, but I really don't like the way he approaches it
Sure.
at all.
Sure.
The lyrics are actually the #1 thing that bothered me on this album, and we talk a lot about lyrics on this channel as, you know, being kind of a bottleneck at times. Either you just care about them or you don't. And
they can be very polarizing.
They can be, and generally I don't really care about lyrics unless they're really bad. And I feel like there are times on this album where they are really bad. Now, it really contrasts with the moments where I think they do work, and so I'll kind of give some examples. I actually felt like the track 10, You Are Your Mother's Child, which just kind of tells the story of a child growing up and so on.
That was really good lyrics.
It is. It's much more intimate, it's relatable, and you feel like Conor Oberst is really pouring his heart out to you. One-on-one, just sitting right across the table from you telling you these things. I feel like a lot of these other tracks just come off as way too preachy, and it actually makes the music sound more pretentious than I think it really is.
What it was meant to be.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, he's just trying to get his thoughts out there. He's just trying to, you know, make some assertions about life and love and death and the way that you should live, but instead of sounding like general comments and words of wisdom to live by, it sounds like he's up on a soapbox explaining why his thoughts are more intelligent than yours. At least that's how it comes off to me. I think that's maybe a bit of a generalization.
And I agree, and it almost feels like he's like writing poetry ahead of time and then fitting it to song. And just his style of like prose or poetry or however he's writing these lyrics does come off a bit preachy, and that's his style. So here's the thing. I know that resonates very well with a lot of people. I just don't happen to dig it.
Yeah,
and I totally agree. I mean, I think that lyrics can be super polarizing, and I know that the things, like, you know, when we set out to do Velocities of Music in the early days, Tom, we broke down what we were looking for into 14 different aspects and then tried to do a self-assessment and figure out, like, what's important to us. I know for me, originality and that straight-through album listen are the 2 qualities that I care most about. Lyrics is way down on the list. However, it does influence me when I don't particularly get into the lyrics. So I will say that it is kind of a bias that I have, but it doesn't really affect my experience overall. I would say that the thing that bothers me most about this album is the fact that he's reusing those vocal melodies on every track. There are a lot of tracks here that I think his vocals just sound terrible. Sound really bad. I don't think that Conor Oberst is a good vocalist, and I think that, you know, and there's a lot of just opinion there. I think his vocals work really well on the more intimate tracks. I think that when he's singing, and it's just him and an acoustic guitar in a light folk setting, that maybe the song's a bit poignant. I think that it works really well because that crack in his voice, that little emotion that he gives out as he sings, I think it really resonates. When you get these big productions and you have like horns and electronic melodies and guitars going on, and his just shitty ass vocals, because he's not that good of a vocalist, let's face it. When you have that mix, it just sounds nasty. It sounds absolutely the opposite of aesthetic, and I just feel like it's not. It doesn't cut it, and I really, and this isn't a problem that plagues only this album. We said the same thing about the People's Key. I've said the same thing about other works that he's done, and I don't feel like it's ever going to change. This is just part of who Conor Oberst is and what he brings to the table musically, and I have a feeling it's going to rub me the wrong way on anything he works on in the future.
Yeah, probably. And another point to the lyrics, you know, you mentioned about how it depends on how important it is to the listener, for sure. But there's another part of that too, because it's not just about the lyrics on their own as like a standstill document, like you're reading them. I mean, for example, what I mean is, think about like metal lyrics. There are a lot of metal lyrics out there that are absolute shit.
Oh, totally.
But part of the reason why it doesn't affect most listeners, such as ourselves as much, is because it's not about the lyrics. You're listening to metal music, you're listening to the awesome instrumentation, you're listening to the dynamics, you're listening to all that.
Progressive songwriting.
Exactly. The problem is that here, there's not enough in the instrumentation to compensate for it. In fact, the instrumentation is simple on purpose so that your attention is diverted to the vocals. So when you're forced to focus on the vocals and the lyrics in general, then it makes them carry much more weight in the songs and therefore on the album, and so it becomes a kind of an exaggerated problem on a listen like this where the vocals are at the forefront.
It certainly creates a sense of displacement and track quality.
Yeah.
It certainly just makes for like a disjointed album.
Yeah.
Listen, I would say, and it's due to lack of execution, not from lack of like intentions or design or initiative or things like that. Conor Oberst is a very well established artist and knows how to make good albums. He just, I personally don't feel like executes it in a way that actually pulls it off. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Tom, do you know where you're at with this album?
I decided I'm going to give it a 59.
I like that score, and I'm going to meet you there. 59.
All right.
I think that's where this is at. It has a number of problems, way more problems than it does strengths. I would say that I would not recommend this album to anybody. Now, however, opinions are always subject to change, and I would love, and I can't wait to see this live, because there's a lot of instrumentation on this album that it's going to be really cool to see how it translates to a live setting. For instance, David Byrne and Zay Vincent played at 8035, headlined 8035 Friday night last year, and while we didn't like Love This Giant as like an album, I think we gave it like low 70s, which is a little below average for us. The live show was fantastic.
Oh, it's incredible.
So you guys know how it is. When you see a band live, totally changes how you maybe interpret their music or what you think of the band. So, have you seen Conor Oberst live? Do you think it'll change our minds? And what did you guys think of Upside Down Mountain? Let us know at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. As always, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and let Tom or I know if there's any albums out there, any at all, that you'd like to see us record on this channel. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.